I just want to jump in straight, and I guess my first question to you would be that you've had a very broad based design career experience. You, after IDC, had a stint where you did your own thing, you had your own design studio. Then you joined Frog, so you've worked at a design studio. You've worked across product companies, so you worked at Practo, you worked at Vedantu, now you're at Myntra. If you had to describe your journey so far in your own words, like what's been like the biggest takeaway for you so far through all of this?
Yeah, I think I had a very meandering journey, like you said, right? And many things kept evolving as I kept moving through the entire design industry. So I think the interesting part was that there was no grand plan. Okay, we started with something. So in school, I was like, I wanted to be a physicist.
Really?
Yeah,
Physicist?
Somehow I was super excited about studying physics. And then as it happens, people around you are studying for IT, and then you get into that. Then you think, okay, yeah, engineering is something that probably will be very interesting. Then I got into engineering, and I did have some of the chops that's required for design probably, which I used to draw a lot. I used to create very detailed architectural drawing when I was in school, and I did not know some of the theories about 1-point perspective or 2-point perspective, but I used to use threads and scales to kind of figure out the perspective drawings. So when I got architecture as a course in IIT, so I thought that probably this is very interesting as a kind of marriage between art and science.
So you first did architecture at IIT?
I first did architecture. So in IIT Roorkee, I did architecture.
IIT Roorkee, okay.
Yeah, so that was a 5-year course. And by the end of it, I got extremely pulled into the world of graphic design. I had come to Bangalore in 2003 and 6 and worked with some of the startups. By the way, startups were not that glamorous that time. It was like small studios and agencies and companies. Worked with them, worked in a lot of marketing and graphic work that I did with them. So, and I thought that this is probably a place that I want to make a career in. I got placed in TCS as a software developer, but I decided to leave that and come to Bangalore. But I think somewhere I also thought that design has to play a slightly bigger role. And that quest took me to IDC, okay, where I was exploring that how design can play a more human-centered role. Either by doing, designing for public services, or even to communicate some messages to the overall audience or people. One of my keen interests was to make a film. Okay,
to make a film?
Yeah, so I when I was joining IDC, I called up somebody in the alumni and said that, do you guys have 360 cameras and G5 machine? I want to make films. And they said, this is not a film school, this is a design school. I said, I will figure it out. Okay, so I landed up in IDC, and when the thesis project comes, the professor was telling me, what are you going to pick up? I said, I'm going to make a film. And he said, this is not a film school, this is a design, design school, and you have to. And I think some of the things that he told me kind of shaped the way I look at design now. And I would probably quote Mr. Puvaiya here, Ravi Puvaiya. So he said, you have to first find a problem. And when you find the problem, then you have to find a solution to it. Now, the solution will define the medium that you're going to choose.
Right.
Okay? So, and I was like, wow, I never thought about it this way, because you always think from the medium first. Okay?
Right.
And till that time, I used to think that way. And then I said, yes, but being what I am, what I did was I reverse engineered the problem to find out a problem area which required me to make a film. And I ended up making a film. And then I realized that, that how difficult filmmaking is. While from outside it looks very simple, that, you can just take a camera and run around. So just around this Powai, I was actually shooting around, made a film. Yeah, it was a kind of fiction film. I made 2 films actually, one fiction and one documentary. Both had its very interesting, story around them. So that was what was going on in IDC. And I think 2007 is when iPhone launched. And like I said, that I was part of the visual communication team, and in VC, you are slightly more medium agnostic. So you could be making a film, you could be making a photography, or you could be doing graphic design, bookmaking, or even a digital app or whatever. So your spectrum was very wide. The fundamentals has to be very strong, of course. So at some point of time, I realized that this revolution that iPhone is going to bring is going to completely transform the digital medium, and the way the people are using use mobile phone or interfaces is going to completely change, because UX and product design used to exist before that, but it was very restrictive. So for somebody who's coming from a really vibrant visual communication background, it would seem like I can't do so much on that, right? But that was going to change. And that's when I came out and joined a couple of my friends to start, I think, one of India's very early UX design company. Cheese, we were one of the fastest 50 companies in NASCOM in 2010. We got featured in a lot of places, and then finally got acquired and then moved to Frog and so on and so forth. But I think the most critical part is that the world will keep changing for design, okay, and there will be new areas and new complexities that will come. I think being adaptive is the most important piece, and keeping your eyes open about what is the new complexity and new areas. But I think the more important part is that the foundations still remain always consistent. At least that's what I've seen, and that's my philosophy has been so far.
That's interesting. So across Practo, Vedantu, and now Myntra, what according to you is stuff that you've been able to universally apply as design fundamentals, and what have you constantly have to adapt to and change and throw out and reintroduce? So what stayed consistent and what did you have to constantly change across these three environments?
I think the thing that remains constant is the fundamentals of visual communication and aesthetics. So for example, typography. And if you go to the foundations of typography, like how much hierarchy you need, how much density you need, what kind of font hierarchy, what kind of spacing, what kind of layouting, grid structure, these are some of the fundamentals. You can take it to any kind of scenario and setting. Till the time human species need to communicate with each other, they will need an interface or something, or a kind of a communication via interface, where these theories will be very, very relevant. What is always changing is the fact that every place you go, before you even apply this, you have to set the playground for design, right? That what level design has to play. In some cases, it has to play a very supporting role. In some cases, it has to play a very commanding role. In some places, it has to. So my job when I go to these multiple places is that first understand the context of the business, because if I'm in the healthcare, I have to understand that what are the critical parameters or variables of a healthcare system is, and then the company that I'm working with, what is their priorities, then the market priorities, then business, and what role design has to play there.
That's so interesting. So you said you first have to set the playground for design, right? And in some cases, design is not the end all and be all. It is a support function.
Some cases it's support.
In some cases, it's not. I think that's such an important point, because I have seen that a lot of people who get into the design field, because we do this day in and day out, it is central for us. It is the main hero, and it is of utmost, or should be at least, of utmost important in any project or with any industry sector we do. And I think to have the maturity to look into that context and say, wait, what is the level of importance that this thing deserves here is, I think, really interesting. And then to not fight with that system, but kind of blend in seamlessly.
Absolutely.
What were compared to being in Frog and being at your own design studio, what was the biggest difference in that versus being in a product environment?
So I think, see, the thing is, in a product company, the biggest difference is that when a company is coming to an agency or a services with a design need, a large amount of buy-in has already happened. Okay, while you are a part of a product company, yes, there is a buy-in because a function has been built. But every day you still have to pitch and sell some of your principles or philosophies that you are trying to build your experience around. and that there can be a lot of friction about what the business is trying to do versus what the right experience you want to build, and whether that comes together or not. And that exercise is a large part of that exercise, right? So while obviously even in a case of client there would be a lot of friction, a client would say, but this is one difference, is that in some cases in a product company you still have to build case for and do those trade-offs to kind of where do you want to land up.
I always used to think it's easier for you on the inside, but what you're saying is it's just as hard.
It's hard, yeah.
To make a case for why something needs to change.
Yeah. See, I mean, again, there are, and I always step back because no two places are same, and there are levels. Okay, at some level you might have to, to get to a hygiene might be difficult. In some cases you can be, way beyond the hygiene. In some cases you want to push for even higher because that's what is required. So I think everywhere and there is a lot of, and again, I do agree that this cannot come together unless there is a really good dance that is happening between the product, tech, design, and data science, and everybody coming together and making the product happen. So bringing everybody together, selling that vision, and building that whole experience is something is almost 60% of our job to some extent.
So interesting. I mean, you've worked with some of the top product companies in India, some of the most well-known startups. Is there a difference between the way tech-enabled startups are built in India and the culture here versus abroad?
It depends upon what industry and what business you are in, right? There's no simple answer to this. So take Google, for instance. When we were actually graduating from IDC, Google was not the most high priority company that people want to join because Google was just a listing page.
Sure. Yeah.
And Google's design was also slightly rudimentary at that point of time. But Google makes a lot of money from their search and ad. And one day they decide that we will completely transform our design philosophy and the way we approach design. And they hired some of the best designers in the industry and brought them together and asked them to build the material design and their whole design system. And I think this is really interesting because it depends upon at what stage of the organization is in. Okay, how much design plays a role in their actual margins or revenues that they generate, and or are they making enough profit to kind of invest that back into design. So these things come into picture. And again, in India, in different places, we actually have those kind of design environment as well. It's about what our priorities are, right? Because in India, if you are trying to do quick growth, are you investing enough onto platform building? If you have the liberty to kind of build more platforms, build more systems, you will start investing. So for example, something like what has Apple brought into, while it seems like just a UI UX thing, but there's the liquid glass. There's a huge amount of physics that has to be built, and that is completely a development effort that has to be done there.
Yeah.
Now,
so you're saying R&D has to be a big thing?
There's a lot of R&D, and again on the other side, at the same time, when you talk about international companies, you think about Amazon. Now, Amazon doesn't try to do too much on their UI, and there's a conversation.
Clearly, they are successful despite the UI.
Yeah, despite the visual aesthetic part of it, UX is good. I mean, of course, and a lot of time in the design community, some design leaders talk about this, that wouldn't be that so many design agencies would have gone to Jeff Bezos and would have said that you just give us this much money, I will just transform the visual aesthetics of in Amazon, and he would have said that probably that's not my priority, okay, and I will do good without that. So it's organization to organization, and
so Amazon was about, I want to focus on operational excellence.
Exactly.
And Apple is like, well, it has to be design excellence. Yeah. So it really depends.
And again, in case of Apple, you see the difference is that they are one of the earliest companies in the tech who could charge a premium for design, which is very rare in the industry usually. I mean, obviously, you see that sometimes in the hotel industry or this industry.
Fashion also.
Fashion also, yes. If you have a premium brand and all of that. But in the tech industry, that's one of the companies which came and said, and see, you cannot do that without having the tech sorted. So their tech was very good. And on top of that, they build a UI and then they said, okay, I'm going to charge so much for the experience, and that premium is almost like 30-40% of your actual cost, which was unheard of. I remember that Steve Ballmer fell down laughing when he heard the price of the phone. So I think those things end up becoming the culture, and accordingly the design system, design team also has to kind of then evolve around those cultures and those values and everything.
Do you see a truly global tech startup emerging from India, which has an impact on the globe? Because, we tend to have, amazing startups here, but we tend to remain India-centric. Why is that?
I think the first is that the problem of India are also quite unique and diverse. Okay, and see, 7 or 8 years back, there were a bunch of companies which tried to operate in India and also go abroad.
Okay.
And that spread them too thin also, and many of them had to kind of roll back.
Did Myntra try that?
Myntra, we are going abroad now, and in a very different way right now, and it's a much more calculated way. But imagine that time you had Zomato, which had already opened. I think they had gone to several countries outside India.
I didn't know that. Oh,
yeah, they had their Zomato version in several countries. Urban Company had gone to Australia. I don't know if they're still operating in Australia or not. I'm not sure about that. But then Practo was also operating in multiple Southeast Asian countries and all. So there was a wave that came, which.
But we weren't successful, you're saying.
So many of them had rolled back, and obviously, like I said, there are bigger problems, and those were the times when these companies were going abroad with they were not profitable and they're still going abroad to kind of get user base. I think that economics don't work. But you have on the other side, there are other different kind of companies like Zoho. And then Freshworks.
Zoho is a great example.
So there are global companies
Freshworks,
and really massive B2B SaaS companies. We don't look at that much. There's a huge potential there. And there are a lot of those companies that are getting built in India. I think it will happen. For the B2C, yes, I think it will take some time, but it might happen. There are some potential B2C companies which can go global. Right.
So if you had to give advice to a startup that's still in its early years and has aspirations to, first of all, scale to the level of a Myntra or a Practo or a Vedantu, and then eventually make a big splash and impact here, and then obviously, what should they do from a product design tech perspective that you think sets them up better to arrive at that? Because I know there are so many that stay in that early stage and never make it and never really end up scaling. So what would you say to them?
I think, for every kind of different businesses, so many things have to come together in the startup world. When you spend a little bit of time, you realize that there are many variables, and probably this is a kind of question that VCs are also dabbling with. That which company should I stake my, put my money on, and and I remember one of my friend who used to run a e-com brand almost 10 years back, and the D2C brands were not that popular at that point of time. He realized that doing an e-commerce, you needed 10 different things, all have to work, to a level that to need to succeed, right? At a good level to succeed. And he was, at that point of time, there were not enough technology to kind of support that. He got completely exhausted trying to drive that thing. And similarly, for any startup, any kind of businesses, you have to have multiple things work. So your founding team has to work out, your product market fit has to work out, the tech, your design, your logistics have to work out. So there are so many things. Your even the funding and how you're supporting the whole growth, that has to work out. So there are multiple things. I don't think there is one single answer to that.
There's no one silver bullet.
Yeah, there's no silver bullet. And there's also a factor of luck.
Yeah, but you seem to have got lucky with all your stints. How did you pick the companies you picked?
No, I think for me it was always, there was some purpose, and or I knew, or either I knew the founders, and I kind of believed in their values or what they were trying to do. So that is how I have built. So for Practo, it was I wanted to give back to the healthcare. In Common Floor, I I knew the founders, okay, and I was for me at that point of time it was either e-commerce or, but I said e-commerce. Already Flipkart is such a big company, so let's try out some other industry, and I went for real estate. In Meesho, it
Oh,
was
common floor. When was this?
this was in 2012.
This was after Practo?
This was before Practo.
Before Practo.
And then for Meesho, it was the reseller business. I was very interesting because during that time, Meesho was very heavily on. Now it is a large part of it is B2C, but then it had a huge B2. The major market was B2,
okay.
B2C kind of the reseller business. When I saw that this housewives from tier 2, tier 3, they were using Meesho to sell clothes to their contacts, and they were earning 4,000 rupees. And that was completely changing their lives. And it completely intrigued me that how is like 4,000 rupees a month changing lives of people. And when I joined and did the user researches and went and met those people and realized that it means so much for those people at that, in tier 2, tier 3 cities. And building a product for them was really something that I looked forward to. So that was an exciting stint. Then of course Edtech, partly because it was education and partly because I again knew the founders. I have helped them initially, even before joining Vedantu many years back when they had come to Bangalore. I had helped them, and it's because Bangalore is a community where a lot of startups are coming and you kind of bump into each other. That's a very vibrant community. So I helped them, set up their first, company when they were setting it up. So I knew them already. So that's how I joined them. And one thing that I learned after all of this is that something interesting came out of this, that multiple companies that I went to, product companies, there are some patterns which repeats.
Yeah.
Like for example, storefront. Now imagine that why would healthcare have a storefront? Storefront is a concept that comes from e-commerce.
Correct.
But it seems like, these patterns replicate, because even in healthcare, and this is related to more like how humans perceive things. It has a storefront, it has a checkout flow, it will have a referral, it will have some kind of post-order experience. So you start realizing that everything has somewhere, a large part of all of this comes from the e-commerce playbook.
So everyone's using that same e-com playbook.
Everybody, so you slightly fine-tune it for your particular use case, but there is a underlying, e-commerce playbook. And that's when Myntra happened. I said, why don't we go to the exact playbook that you had worked on? So that's how I joined also Myntra, and given that it was in fashion, I think it's a very exciting space.
Wow. I want to ask you maybe one or two more questions, and then we'll get into a rapid fire kind of round.
Okay.
So get ready. Here is I think a question that probably every design leader, design manager faces. So here's a scenario: a talented designer creates beautiful work, but struggles with stakeholder communication. How would you handle something like this?
See, there can be different things, okay, and in different scenarios you can do different things. I will obviously have to, evaluate my way of working is to have to evaluate the situation and then take a call on it. But one point I would like to talk about here is that more often than not, what we try to do is that we try to teach a person who is extremely good at craft too much of other things. And this happens a lot in our industry, that you have to be think like a product manager, you have to start doing analytics, you have to start doing that's good for generalists. But if somebody is very good at craft, I would, in an ideal scenario, I would like to create an environment where he can just practice his craft well.
So identify that strength and just focus on that.
Yeah, but see, in the reality, this really not always works in a larger organization. You have to have some of those other
skill sets.
If I have my way in a certain organization and I know that this is valuable and I need this skill set,
sure,
I will create that environment. Otherwise, there are sometimes I have also done this, is that I've told the person that this is not the right place, you can do much better somewhere else. And if you think you want to make that choice, you can make that choice. Okay, and I think not to stop that person from actually actualizing his true potential by just pushing something which is not really adding value.
Super. That makes a lot of sense to me. So when in the situation where you did have to transform somebody to pick up another facet, and I know that you've mentioned design coaching Are there specific feedback techniques that you use to help people transform?
Apart from design skills, you mean to say?
Well, if let's say they have to pick up communication skills, they have to pick up ability to present well, or good analytical skills.
To me, I think I still rely on, in some of these areas, I work with the person directly, and that helps. Okay. There is obviously, I mean, case by case, there is feedbacks, and we do all of that. But the best is when you work together. Okay, and I think that has helped most of the people I've mentored in the past in the best way. That if there is let's say a problem where I have to pitch to the leadership and somebody has to pitch and I am also working on that same thing, we work together, sit together. Because that's when, like I say, like you cannot delegate understanding, right?
And similarly, you have to understand the problem first yourself.
And you have to, be in that, to understand that how somebody's mind work, or, so while you're communicating, how you think more about the actual words is about how you frame the problem statement, right, in your head. That mental framing or this can only happen when you work very closely with somebody who's thinking like that. And there's something that a muscle that you grow over the time. The best is to work very closely with somebody. The only thing is that in the recent past, I have not got a chance to do that much. But yeah, when I was slightly, at least if you even till 4 or 5 years back, I would do that a lot with my subordinates.
You were much more hands-on.
Much more hands-on, and I would spend time.
Considering you've worked with Meesho, you're also working with Myntra, and I think that gives you a span across tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. What's the difference in behavior across these geographic locations in terms of Indian users?
Pertaining to UX design or usability or overall?
Overall e-com?
Yeah. So e-com, I think price sensitivity is one big parameter that is obviously different between these two. Very deal sensitive. And there are a lot of nuances to this. For example, we know that the affluent, which is, and the tier 1 Indian, audience, they would like a little more neat aesthetic design, right?
Yeah.
The tier 2, they are used to a little more busy design, paradigm. Now,
so less is more, but more is more.
More actually works for them, right? And the interesting part is if you don't show more, then they think that probably there's something wrong with that. There was one research I was doing while I was in Practo, and Practo's design branding was done by a very renowned design agency based out of New York called Sarmaib Gizmer Habib, CGH. And absolutely great work that they had done. But the interesting part is that we were talking to some users. This cohort was users who were using our competition but not Practo. Okay, so we told them that you are using this. Say, why do you use this? And they told me that this is features that I use. I love this and all of that. And then we showed that what do you think about this app? Do you want to use this? Said, does it have all of this? I said, yes, it has all of these. Oh, no, I will not use it because it's too pricey. I said, we didn't even tell you the price.
Yeah,
because this, just by looking at the visuals. And because it was... Story. So you see that there is a automatic price perception attached to sometimes the aesthetics and the So coming back to what I was talking about in the tier 1, tier 2, what we saw is that, so there was an experiment that we did where we said that we will have a slightly more different density design for tier 1 and different density design for tier 2.
Oh, you had 2 different designs?
We had 2 different. And,
isn't that a bigger headache just managing?
Yes, but if it
but if it's valuable enough for you to do it.
If the ROI is good enough, then we'll do that, right? And this was the exact point. And see, today in today's world, the idea is that and everything goes through A/B testing. So once you test it out and you see that if that's working or not, it is really beneficial to the user, you basically use it. But we realized that ROI is that variation is not too huge. Now that basically means that you have a certain kind of design that these people like, and there's a certain kind of design that I'm more adhering to this audience, but the ROI is not different. So you have to figure out and regress it to a slightly
something like a happy medium.
Medium. Yeah. And there was a huge debate that whether we should have this or we should have this 3 different. Actually, not 2. There were 3 different.
3 different variations.
So there were a lot of variations that we look for, and if it optimizes for really user understanding. But yeah, we realized that it doesn't really work, because the other point is that what has happened is India is also like, and India is very diverse, very interesting, because you have different apps, but then a large audience of India uses YouTube. YouTube, Instagram is ubiquitous, and Facebook or social media or YouTube. People are also playing PUBG even if they're tier 3.
Sure.
And sometimes when I try to play PUBG, I just cannot figure out that how are they figuring out this
Yes.
UI, which is so complicated, but people do figure out, right? And now with Blinkit and everything, you see that both the tier 2 and tier 1, they are all using quick commerce. Okay.
Yeah.
I think you were mentioning about your cook,
Yeah.
who also was using
Yeah.
Blinkit. So there is a happy, dense area, which I think what Blinkit, Zeptos, and Swiggies of the world represent to some
The
extent.
right amount of density.
Right amount of density, right amount of vibrancy. Again, vibrancy is something still up debate, because if you see Zomato is very vibrant versus Swiggy
Yeah.
is slightly less
Slightly
vibrant.
minimal, yeah.
So where do you exactly, because you need to create, which also doesn't alienate us, okay, who are like little more design aesthetic savvy, and also doesn't alienate, the
People looking for more abundance.
more, yeah. So yeah, I think so. These are the experiments that you keep doing.
Interesting.
And you see, like these days, font size, we are going to 8, 10, okay, and we would question that whether that works or not. But in some scenarios, that do work. Okay, we
Really?
have been going
8 font size.
8 font size, 9 font size up on the PLP pages. I see that.
Wow. I want to talk next about the one topic that everyone wants to probably hear your opinion on. It's what is AI doing to the design profession? So with this whole AI revolution, when you hire, has it impacted what skill sets you look for? Has it changed the profile of people you're looking to take in?
No, I think right now, as of today, the skill set has not changed completely.
Okay.
But I think what we are doing definitely is that we've started looking at if somebody is good with visual, or somebody is good with design systems, somebody is good with UX, how does that person see AI playing a role into their whole day-to-day or the workflow, and how systematically that they can think about it. So I think that is one that we are definitely looking at it, because the correct approach is very important to AI, right? How they are looking at it to kind of augment their work. That is one part. The second part is that obviously there is a slightly more higher priority to building a really solid design system, okay, a context building documentation that will become very, very critical going forward. So that skill set is slightly going higher up. So for example, if you are a visual designer and you do a visual design, after you've done the visual design, can you contextualize it, or break it down into tokens and parameters, which basically then can be.
So can you think in systems, essentially?
Can you think in systems, and can you think in terms of parameters and tokens and all of that? Yeah.
So as you see in the next 2-3 years, AI innovation becoming more accelerated, do you think design systems will continue to play a big role? I mean, I've been reading reports of how if the one everything app gets built, then it can change UI in real time based on what task you want to do. In that world, do we need components? Do we need fixed design systems and UIs, or is it all fluid?
You still need the rules, and
You still need rules.
you still need
100%.
rules. You need so when you self-generate something, you still need to have the basic fundamental. So now the point is that how higher up component will you need
That's
is something that I don't know, but probably you will still need to have lower down tokens and components to generate or the parameters to generate the components that you want to do. You can have also predefined components which can be self-aware in an environment and kind of render itself differently given the rules. So there can be different scenarios that I see will evolve.
Do you think designers should be worried about their job with AI on the scene?
See, I mean, when you think in terms of that, whether there will be enough volume of work or not, that's when only the point comes that whether you should be worried or not. Otherwise, there's no need to worry because, like I said, there's a cycle. If there is too much chaos, designer's job is to create order. When there's too much order, designer's job is to create the chaos. So yeah, we'll have always something to do.
So maybe our job in the future is to maybe throw in a bit of chaos into the mix.
Like I said, but you have the rules, then you know how you have to break the rule a little bit and figure out that how do you create that magic.
Awesome. Awesome. So if there was one piece of advice that you would give a designer entering the field today, considering everything that's happening, considering AI, what would that be?
This is considering AI?
AI is a big part of it.
But
in general, right? Somebody is entering into the design field today.
Somebody entering into the design, usually I give this feedback. The first part is about, and sometimes I find it, I kind of blame myself for giving such a difficult advice, which is, so first you need to get your foundations right? That has to be there, right? Okay, like understanding of typography, visual, frameworks, grids, or UX design or research, and interaction design, copywriting. All of that is what is required. This is like foundational. And if somebody is getting in the industry, this is like the table stakes. If you don't have that, then
so learn the alphabet, essentially.
These are like the alphabet. Yeah. So you have to know about this, and you have to be good in this. Not even know. No, to anybody can know this. You have to be good in this. Now, if you want to be the next, so this is in the next 5% of the audience, okay, which are like the cream of the cream. So you have to be good in some of the very specific areas, like you have to be good in product thinking, or you have to be good in design systems, or you have to be good in, or maybe illustration. So maybe 2 or 3 of this. The first, what I say that you have to be good in everything, okay, at least to some level to be considered a designer. Then the second level comes where you have to be good in either 2 or 3 of these. Then the third is where you build a depth, because I think the one problem is today is that there is no depth. Okay, the depth is slightly short in supply. So if you say that, okay, I am going to be very, very in-depth into e-commerce domain, or maybe just design systems, or maybe, AI-driven something, that kind of brings you to the top 1% of the people.
So build enough of that broad base, and then the depth, so that you at least have true expertise in a few things. So that T-shaped person.
The other thing that the second part that I was mentioning is that, and this is something that I keep thinking about all the time, is that so Shreyas Joshi, who's a product manager, he talks about product management and everything. And so he was giving one example where he was telling that, imagine there was a workshop happening 12 years back, and there were 2 speakers who were giving talks at the same time. One was Jensen Huang, and the other was Mark Pincus. One is NVIDIA CEO, and the other is Zynga CEO. And most of the PMs at that point of time would have rushed into the Zynga workshop or speaking, you cut to today, if the same thing happens, everybody will go into the
Jason Huang's talk.
So the question here is that, and to most of the designers, I would say that, yes, we are all into getting the job and something, you are doing the job, but invest your time in something that is going to be critical in the future, because the people who are actually making the most out of today are the ones who have dedicated their last 10 years in something else. So for example, AI is today so hot. The people who are building the AI and working in the AI domain are the ones who have dedicated the last 10, 15 years into the AI. Now, one is, of course, could be the approach is to always keep adapting to whatever is happening and changing. The other could be that you invest your effort into something which is very, very future forward, and go very deep into that.
Awesome. Okay. All right. Rapid fire. You can answer in one or more than one word.
I'm very bad at answering
one. Or a sentence. Or a sentence is fine too. We'll maybe cut it to one word eventually. Okay. First question. Biggest waste of time in the design process?
I mean, everything has a context, okay, and you need it for some reason. But sometimes I feel, internal presentations, sometimes
I have to agree with you.
Kill a lot of time.
Yeah. Okay. Most overrated design skill everyone thinks they need?
This is difficult. No idea.
Okay. What should your first job be? Chaos of a startup or the structure of a big company?
I think in both the cases, people have figured out some way to kind of navigate and evolve out of it. I have very different point of views there. Though I feel that working in a slightly larger organization gives you the air cover and some of the fundamentals that you need to kind of get right really well established. And I can tell you from my experience also, because when I have started a studio right out of my college, I was doing things which I thought was right, which was actually right, but I was extremely not getting the confidence to do that, continuously do that, because I was not seeing the goodness of it in here and now. Okay, that
You didn't see the impact of it.
Yeah, because for example, documentation, design documentation we do now. I was not seeing the benefit of it, and my partner was saying that why are you doing this? Why are you wasting time? Let's go to the next project and all of that. But when I was in Frog and I was doing the same thing and spread over a longer period of time, you see the benefit of doing documentation at scale. Then you realize that okay, what I was doing was right. So to build some of those, behaviors and muscles of design,
Rituals, behaviors. So it's good to have that big company experience.
Yeah, I think a little bit of that is definitely helpful as a beginning.
Design thinking, revolutionary or overhyped?
It was revolutionary when it was designed, when it was brought into practice. In between, it became fairly overhyped. It might become relevant again. Okay. So yeah.
All right. Design trend that needs to die in 2025?
No idea.
Okay. What's better for UX? Beautiful interfaces or boring but functional?
No, beautiful interfaces that are functional. That should be
Perfect. That's the answer I was hoping you'll give. Design by committee or design by executive mandate?
It's like democracy, right? So obviously democracy, there was one concept where you only have a certain relevant people who should be allowed to voting, right, and all that. I think for design that should matter, because if everybody has a point of view, it kind of regress to a very base level, right, average, and I think that's not perfect. But yeah, it should still have a little bit of a breadth of different opinions. So yeah, there should be some level of committee, but then not.
But executive decision. Yeah. Okay. Do you listen to music while designing or prefer complete silence?
I prefer silence.
Complete silence. Why?
Yeah. I get distracted by music. Maybe I like music so much that I start listening to the music.
Okay. Will physical stores still exist in 10 years?
In 10 years, I think still yes. Maybe long time, I mean like many years down the line, they might not be required. But in the near future, 10 years, I do think, because I do have a theory that probably a large number of items with 3D printing and even all the kind of drone supply and everything, a lot of those will go away. But not in 10 years, there will be still the need to have stores.
Voice-based shopping, is that the future or a fad?
I will talk about voice, okay, because this is a very interesting area, voice itself. Shopping is obviously, you can apply voice to shopping, but voice as an interface, my theory is, my at least hypothesis is that, see, voice had been there for quite some time, but it has some challenges.
Yeah.
Okay, it's not discrete, you can don't do multitasking with voice, right? So voice will keep growing. It is already growing, when the chat and LLMs coming in, but it will not replace, first of all, what we have today, which is the a kind of
GUI,
GUI and kind of an interface where you click. But there might be something else which can bypass the voice. Okay. See, the other point is that just to enter text, we have been using a keypad, and this is like some 100 years old typewriters. Like still the way to enter text is a keypad. And we have not been able to replace it till now. And I think there is a huge disruption possible if BCI or some other thing that comes in, a kind of a brain-computer interface or something, which allows you to directly enter text. Because in the LLM world and the AI world, I think the potential of what AI can do is completely restricted by what we can input it.
Yeah.
Okay. And there can be a huge breakthrough there. Will voice be the actual, the real player? I don't know. It may be a combination of all of that.
But you see a good, bright future for the voice.
Voice will keep growing. Voice will definitely grow. I think it has already started growing a lot. But not the main player, I feel.
It'll always be a supporting kind of medium. Okay. What was the last app you deleted because of bad UX?
I do remember.
Or you stopped using? Anything that you would pick from whatever you have on your phone today and say,
I actually don't recall, okay, but I think I just recall that I did delete something because when I was, I read about it somewhere and then I opened it and there were so many different steps in between onboarding that I got a little frustrated and I just
which
deleted.
domain was this? Fintech or?
I think it was something to do with, creating your, avatars or something. Okay. So, I was,
What was your, oh, well, actually, you already answered this. Your childhood dream job before design was physicist.
kind of.
Was that your dream
Yeah.
job? Okay. Design superpower you wish you had?
Yeah, I mean, I did not have to convince anybody and everybody would got convinced with my design. Okay. I just get into a room and show that this is a design and everybody says, okay, yes.
I would love to have that. Designer you'd love to have coffee with, living or dead?
But of course, I would like to pick brains of Johnny Ives. Okay, yeah.
Okay, that's the end of the rapid fire round. I think we can open up to audience.
Okay, hi. First of all, thank you so much. It was really, really insightful. So my question to you is, as a designer, what is the right mindset to have or the method to follow in order to contribute not only to UX, but also to business strategy?
I think the mindset should be, you have to go inside a problem and understand the business and the user both. Okay, and that everything basically stems from there. You have to put both of them into perspective. Obviously, when you start your career, probably understanding the nuances of business might be difficult, but it will happen over the time. Okay, but yeah, the whole point is that put both of them together. Try to understand what is going on here. Like for example, in our case, in e-commerce, logistics is so important. Without knowing that, getting into a room and having a conversation about design becomes very difficult because you have to build the whole design functionality around it, because you move one button here and that has a cascading effect on so many things on the logistics, which is a huge cost, and there's so many of conversations. So knowing this and knowing this is very important. I would say start with that, but yes, in the initial days you wouldn't know that, and that is also good, because if you know too much of that, then you will stop designing what is ideal. So I think it's a natural progress, but yeah, start with both of this side. That's good enough.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Tanisha. So my question is that there are certain situations where the engineering bit of it is saying that, oh, this is impossible. But the design really requires it, and the product really requires it for the user experience. So how do you deal with situations like this?
First of all, of course, this problem is a very standard problem. It happens in every places. Okay. I mean, the one is that you go through a process of breaking down the problem. Okay, and then you say, okay, I will do a phased approach to that. That can be one way, and there are different ways of mitigating this. Okay, the one way is this. The second way is that you create a you create a separate thread of platform capabilities. So in some cases, we don't look at that this particular problem I'm going to solve this and this requires this. That's not the what we try to solve for. We say, okay, if there's a pattern that I see, I will basically go to the platform team and say, let's build this capability and this will solve for all the scenarios like this going forward. So that is the second approach. And the third approach is that you either build a very good relationship with the dev team and work very closely together, or the designers themselves have a little bit of engineering chops within themselves. That also helps. Like I remember one of my friend who works in Google, and he was interviewing in Google, and the dev asked them that how much engineering or front-end engineering or whatever technical knowledge you have. His answer was enough to be dangerous.
That's a really good answer.
Yeah.
So we just have to know enough to be a pain in the neck for the engineering team.
Hi. So you mentioned that if somebody wants to become a part of the 1% of the designers, they have to be more, go in depth in like future forward thinking. So what would you say is something that young designers should start looking into that is fairly untapped and very interesting? What would you suggest?
I think the first thing is that you have to figure out what your strength areas are. Now, and when we say you have to be one person, you have to be really good at what you do. Okay, so if your core strength is visual, then go deep down into visual, because that's also a very important thing. It's not that just because AI has come that visual designers will not be required. They will be required to give really a character to whatever you build. The second is if you are creative in problem solving. So when you build a component, so today 80-90% of whatever interface that we want to build is using the similar kind of patterns, right? So that's not the problem. That will be done by AI, no doubt. But there will be always some communication. Suddenly you go to a healthcare segment, suddenly you go to some new segment. There will be new technologies or new requirements that will evolve in the world, which will need somebody to think about that how the interface or how the communication or the information has to be laid out, or maybe create abstractions. Those creativity has to be brought by, and if somebody is good in that, that person should focus on that. For other folks also, I say that if you are not completely averse to coding, start getting into a bit of code, because that also opens up your mind and how you can basically do permutation, combination design, and play around with code to generate design. So I think you have to figure out where your core strengths lie, and then focus on that.
I have a follow-up question to what you just spoke about, the convincing power being your superpower, right? What is that one design decision that you've made that initially got a pushback from stakeholders or clients, but you somehow managed to convince them?
Almost like an interview question. Huh?
Yeah, they're interviewing
I'm
you
just trying
for
to-
a job.
In the first place, and especially in Practo, when I was building the design system, and we were one of the first companies to build the design system in India. Okay, obviously it's Shopify and everybody has built that. Not many companies in India were having a very good design system. So when I was building that, I had pushback not only from the business side but also from my own team, because that time some members of my team said that our main job is to make the screens.
To design, yeah.
And again, it's not design. It's like we have to make the screens. Okay, so and for me it was like the screen is just a sum of different parts, and they obviously have to come together in some way to look cohesive. But yeah, I mean, you have to think also in systems and parts, and so doing that was very difficult. But once we did that, and I was able to convince over the time, it took me a lot of effort. I also built a complete framework around it. So a lot of time, the way you take the design, you have to break down the problem in a very different way for different audiences. In some cases, you can do a benchmarking. In some cases, you can do a framework build up, or some cases you do you show competition. So you do different ways of storytelling or whatever you want to do, and then you take it down to the audience. I think we did that in Practo, and eventually I was able to convince them.
So it's interesting that you said even from your own team, they said our job is not to make design systems but to make screens.
They thought that it will probably restrict their creativity. And see that.
Yeah, I think that creativity restriction concern I've also heard.
Right, yeah. But it's I think before you start thinking in terms of creativity restriction, think about some musician, and like a musician break down in music
Absolutely.
into
Great example. It's
in
essentially the same 7 notes repeating themselves.
right. So somebody who actually broke down music into the 7 notes was himself or herself a great
Systems
musician.
thinker. Yeah.
So
and a great musician. Yeah.
So I think every designer should also think in that way. That is that, and being a designer, I mean, one is that you can be a craft person also, and that's also a great thing to do. I mean, so if you are a designer, then you have to think in those things. If you're a craft, then focus on craft, which is the singer is a singer, right? And then you have Shreya Ghoshals of the world. Okay, so yeah, I mean, both the things are equally important.
That's so interesting. That's a great metaphor. Next question.
Hi, sir. Firstly, thank you for this session. I had a bunch of eye-openers, especially with a user rejecting a product because it looked more expensive, right? because I would think the opposite, right? But my question to you is, when reviewing portfolios of a mid-level designer, what is something that immediately tells you if this person is a fit or not?
See, I think a standard practice, obviously, it starts with a quick understanding of the visual chops, okay, that the portfolio brings in. And again, sometimes there's a range that you're looking at. Okay, in some cases, I might be looking at a slightly lower range of visual, finish versus higher range of visual finish. But based on that, the first priority, and I think a lot of design leaders also, sometimes we meet as like, okay, see, we all make this whole long portfolio, right, where you have the process, you have this, you have research. I think it's very important to do that, but we often scroll down
to the screen,
to the final screen, and then start looking at that, and then go back up probably. So that happens, but very like basic things. We at least when I am looking at, I glance it out very fast. Like for example, are you using justification, or where you are using justification, or if you are being the spacing or line heights and all of that. Those minor details are something that you quickly glance and see that okay, somebody is good at that or not. And after that, you try to look at the project quality and everything, and is there a real good problem that you have solved, and how you have communicated it and all of that. So that's the portfolio. But eventually, I think anybody who is an SPD and above, senior product designer and above, we now have started doing a whiteboarding exercise, right? Which is about how you think about the design. See, if you are SPD and below, then the thing is that you are probably your portfolio and an assignment should do that job of telling that how you think. But if you have been in the industry for long enough, then your portfolio will already speak about the volume. Then I can engage you into a workshop where there's an actual whiteboarding session happens. You think about problems and everything, and then
that's actually really interesting.
This is quite a.
So you just give them like a broad, open-ended kind of problem, and then it's like a live.
Yeah, it's a live conversation. So I remember that and I think this is slightly borrowed from the consulting industry, okay, and also the product management, okay. So where you give a guesstimation problem or some exercise in product thinking to the product manager and I think now designers have also borrowed it, at least to kind of see that how do you break down a problem. And I remember that when we were giving it out to somebody, and that person was not ready. So, and after the whole thing happened, she mentioned that, I was not ready, and I was taken by surprise. And the idea was that this was exactly the point of that. How can you think on the go? How can you break down the problem on the go? So yeah.
Thank you.
Whiteboarding, really interesting.
Hello sir. My name is Vaibhav, and my question to you is, what are 3 design principles which you really admire, and which do you also use in your daily life?
That's a tough. I mean, one is when we talk. So in e-commerce, one thing that usually comes up is that e-commerce versus B2C. B2C versus B2B. What are some design principles that are different? Okay, and when I'm doing for B2C, like your affordance has to be very high, which means that your button has to look like button. They have to stand out and all of that, right? Your icons, if you are there. So discovery and every element that you put, all of them have to be equally high on affordance, which becomes really problematic. But yeah, and even if that means that leads to some kind of a problem, which is like if by mistake you click on add to bag, it's okay for me because you made a mistake, you made a sale, I made a sale, huh? So so that is good for me. On the other hand, in the B2B, your tolerance has to be very high, which means because it's a business process, right? You don't want by mistake something to happen, or like for example in B2C, I will not put my error tolerance or to kind of undo is slightly more hidden than on B2B. I will have the my undo should be slightly more visible and more discoverable. So those are some kind of principles that you try to use for different kind of designs that you use.
Affordance versus tolerance. That is really cool, man. Very cool.
Hi, sir. When designing products, we often build on familiar human behaviors and mental models. Like, for example, how you mentioned about the QWERTY keyboard, how it was carried over from the typewriter. My question is, when do we know that it's time to break away from this established pattern and reimagine the system entirely? Because we've often learned that you shouldn't reinvent the wheel. But when do we know that it's time to do that?
Yeah, that's a very good question. You are right. In most of the scenarios, and when you are doing business as usual, or like you are trying to optimize on business and everything, on the design side, we often say that let's not reinvent the wheel, because people are used to those patterns, and there's also a cost attached to building a new behavior, because we do a lot of experiments with new behaviors. To be frank, there are hypotheses that this behavior will work. We have used something that, not even behavior, something as simple as saying that, okay, we will make bottom nav mein the center icon, we will make it completely dark and vibrant and whatever. People will click more on that. No, the opposite. That actually fell down. So some of these things are not absolutely, you cannot predict some of these. And to build a behavior, it's not that it will not get built. If there is a value in that, people will start using it, but you have to then stay with that for almost a year or so with that experiment. So sometimes those liberties are not there. But as a designer, and I can tell you only about how I will approach this, is that, and as a designer in an organization, you're always looking for opportunities. For example, redesigning a whole app is something, if you say that, I want to do that, or I want to create a new homepage, nobody will allow that, because it's a ship that is flying, or
a plane
that is flying, and nobody wants to
change the wings. Yeah.
It's only when suddenly, and I've done this thesis on I've spoken to multiple leaders, when there is a huge tech change that is happening. Let's say there is a personalization engine getting built, or there is a complete rehab of the whole system is doing. That is when you sneak in some of this work, okay, and that is when you do some of those work. Similarly, for this also, it's about looking for opportunities. One is, as a designer, if I have to do this, I will look for opportunity where there is some disruptive thing that is happening within the organization, okay, or there is a macro dynamic that is going around. Because also, would Apple have been successful if it was tried 10 years before or 10 years after? I mean, like whatever Steve Jobs tried to do that. Okay, there's also a timing attached to it where some of the disruptive thoughts come together. So my job will be to kind of start looking for those opportunities. One is that within the organization, when I can play around with those experiments, okay, when there are tech things getting developed, or some new tech. For example, today AI is coming in, and now we are getting into looks that can be generated with AI, but that is something so new. You can be creating a completely new pattern or something. And similarly, if there is some tech rehash happening, I will actually try to sneak in some really different kind of experiences out there.
Thank you, sir.
Fantastic. So Shayak, it's been an awesome session. I think we could speak for another 2 hours, but then you'll miss your flight.
Yeah.
But we must do a part 2, because there are so many things that I resonated with, and I'm sure the team resonated with, and so many things that we heard of that we had no idea. Right? I think your experience of having worked in such diverse product environments and consulting, I think gives you a special ringside view of how design transforms, how it delights, and what are the nuances that you must keep in mind. So again, thank you so much for making the trip down. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I hope this was fun for you as well.
Yeah, thanks, Saurabh, and for inviting me. Great audience and great questions, and I think I had a great time chatting with you. Lovely being here. Would love to come down again. Thanks for having me here.